What's going on? Have you heard the news? The Missing Middle Housing Plan has been approved as of February 2024. So we're going to dive in and talk about what exactly does that mean for housing in the Knox County area. Let's get started. All right, so as I said, as of early February 2024, the city of Knoxville has approved the Missing Middle Housing Plan. This is part of the comprehensive land use and transportation plan, kind of laid out by Mayor Kincannon. Essentially, the plan has 23 policies and actions within it. It is about what's happening with land use in general within the Knox County area. So you can, the report itself, this plan is like 60 or 80 or something pages. But we're going to specifically focus on this missing middle housing piece. But I did just want to say this is all within the larger context of this land use moving forward. So what's the point of this? Why is this needed? Essentially, the most recent plan was created in 2023. Well, as we know, a lot has changed within Knoxville and Knox County, and we are projected between now and 2045 to grow by another 100,000+ people, which means that the total population for the county would be 578,000. So the idea is, how do we best grow? Is essentially what this whole plan is for. So as I said, within this plan, there are 23 total policies and action items, and some of those are directly related to housing, which we're going to talk about those two direct housing pieces today. And then also you can go look at the plan and see the other parts that support this idea about housing. So what exactly is the missing middle housing? What's the purpose of this? So essentially, this is getting at several things. Number one, housing affordability. Number two, the stat is that about 41% of residents in Knox County live alone. However, there isn't one bedroom or studio housing that supports that. And then also, zoning doesn't really properly support the idea that not all lot needs to be a single family house. Townhouses, duplexes, condos, smaller apartment type buildings would definitely help this idea of the missing middle of housing. So the idea is housing affordability, housing availability, and housing that makes sense for the growth of Knox County moving forward, as well as for current residents. In September, there was basically not like a hearing, but there was a meeting where essentially people that currently rent in the Knoxville area are like, we can't afford housing. We would like to buy something, but what's available doesn't make sense for who we are. There's nothing available for, a certain demographic within Knox County, within Knoxville. So the whole goal is to address that. So within those 23 policies and actions too, as I mentioned, are directly related to housing. So we're going to talk about those two. So let's dive in. The first one is the fifth one listed on the whole list of 23 policies and actions. And it says this: create neighborhoods with a variety of housing types and amenities in close proximity. So in order to support this policy, what the proposed plan is create one or more zoning districts that implement the traditional neighborhood place types. So what is traditional neighborhood place types? Feel free to go check out the plan, but essentially this is not only single family homes, but residential, attached, multifamily, a variety of housing options, essentially. So the idea is that zoning would support not just a house, but a duplex, a townhouse, a single family on small to medium-sized lots, attached residential, such as duplexes, multiplexes, and townhomes, as well as multifamily buildings. And then it talks about what are some of the attributes? Stories 1 to 3, setback 0 to 20 feet, generally consistent within a block. The primary mode, I think this is cool for transportation, is walking and biking. Secondary mode would be automobile parking on street and private off street, typically shared and located. Blocks are small and walkable with many street connections. Alleys are common. And so what this says is open space. Compared to suburban neighborhoods, there is more public open space in the form of neighborhood and community parks, pocket parks, and preserved passive open spaces. Private yards tend to be small and secondary to other open space. Neighborhood schools may serve as an open space. So the idea is just providing more housing options. Traditionally, what we see in the Knoxville area are single family homes on a lot. And the idea is we're gonna have more of like a neighborhood that maybe smaller yards, but it's got a more walkable option and more diversity in terms of the types of housing built within that traditional neighborhood. So something else that's a part of this creating a variety of housing amenities is creating standards that encourage neighborhoods in certain place types to include a mix of housing types. So again, the same idea, a diversity of housing types, not just a single plain house. Establish measurable standards to define neighborhood character. So this is talking about zoning regulations, setbacks, road frontage, building types, etc. And then provide site design flexibility for amenities. Regulations should provide flexibility for new neighborhood development to provide desired design features. Consider a point system that includes minimum standards and additional design features such as recreational areas, trails, electrical vehicle charging, street lights, underground utilities, or exceptional architectural and landscape design. So this is kind of this comprehensive look of like, yes, we need some different housing options, but we also want to do it nicely. We want to do it in a way that makes sense for a resident. Basically make it something that's desirable for people. So that is the 5th policy in action that's directly related to, it's number 5. That's why I'm saying it's the 5th, because it's the 5th of 23. And then the second policy in action of the 23 within this future land use plan says, that's related to housing, says promote attainable housing that meets the needs of the current and future residents, which again is the entire goal of this plan in general, that it's addressing growth, it's addressing missing middle housing. So number 1 would be define and allow various forms of housing in the zoning code by right. An update to the zoning ordinance should define a wide range of housing types, allow development of these housing types by right in appropriate districts, and remove other regulatory barriers that significantly increase the cost of housing development. The place types provide guidance on the variety of housing types that are applicable. So I've included 2 different stories from Knox News Sentinel, 2 different links kind of about this process. And something that was interesting is one of the developers was saying, look, if I develop, I can take a lot and I can put a house on it, and that's going to yield a certain price. It's going to cost a certain amount for me to develop. Versus if we take that same lot and we put a triplex on it, we put several townhomes on it, now we are developing land in such a way that it's more useful for others, it's more affordable, but it's also economically makes more sense on the long term for the developer. So the idea is to allow and support zoning that would allow for more than just a single family home on a specific lot. Same thing, allow the development of housing within commercial areas. The corridor, mixed use, and town center mixed use place types on the future land use map. So basically it's saying on this map, we've identified where best we can do a corridor mixed use, where we can do these different types. Let me show you a corridor mixed use. So check that out. So this is talking about commercial, office, and then residential, multifamily, etc. So the idea is like, how do we grow? How does it make sense for what the county has? What is appropriate? Where is a traditional neighborhood appropriate? And where is this mixed use idea appropriate within this land use map? So the whole thing is like, how do we best grow and put housing into this land use plan that makes sense for future growth? So essentially, future land use map applied to most existing commercial areas in the county. Mixed-use zoning districts that implement these place types should allow for housing. Other commercial zoning districts should also accommodate some types of housing. So this is the idea that just because it's commercial, we can also allow a type of housing, probably a mixed use, probably more of that, multi-unit type of situation residentially. Identify areas for multifamily development that have the appropriate supportive infrastructure. So in other words, we're not just putting these randomly anywhere. It's what would make sense for the type of housing and the buyer that this would apply for or that would most appeal to. So future land use map identifies areas appropriate for mixed use, traditional neighborhood, and commercial development. The rezoning or development process should consider the suitability of existing and planned infrastructure. So for example, what's happening with public transportation? What's happening with parks? What's happening with walkability? And where we're kind of putting these multifamily places, these duplexes, townhouses, where we're developing what type of residential use and property. Create parking standards that support mixed-use development. And parking is a huge deal, by the way. As part of the zoning ordinance update, revise minimum parking standards, parking exemptions, parking locations, bicycle parking requirements, and related regulations, and include standards distinct from mixed-use areas. So I will say that it feels like with the growth of Knoxville, of Knox County, that parking is a bit of a free-for-all. Sometimes this has really screwed over new businesses, depending on what's happening with parking. If parking's not available, this can become a nightmare, and people get very territorial, obviously, over their parking. So parking is certainly an issue to be addressed as downtown, South Knox, Central Avenue, all of that. And we talk about how the land is being used, what's being developed, and where people are parking. And then the last piece of this Missing Middle initiative, these two main action plans, says create incentives that promote attainable housing. It says, in addition to reducing barriers to housing development, the zoning ordinance should offer incentives that support the supply of a wide range of attainable housing. Incentives could include expedited reviews and pre-approved plans or tax abatements. So basically, taking a broader view about the type of housing that is allowed, that is supported, that people can get permits for, and making sure our zoning is supporting this, the growth of Knoxville and housing in general, attainable housing and housing affordability for the largest number of possible people within Knoxville and Knox County. So that being said, now what happens now? So this plan has been approved, and if you go read this 80,000 page plan, it's not that much. It's 60 or 80. Let me just tell you, it is 82 pages. I knew that. But essentially what happens now is, right now they're working on the implementation of it. If you go look at where all these housing, like these two specific things that are related to housing, you can see right now in the plan there's a progress chart, and every item related to the housing is essentially not yet started. So the idea is that is to come, that it is in the works. I want to read this to you directly as it says. I'm going to read the language to you exactly how it says. So summary of actions, action status. So all those things specifically that are specifically about housing, those are all in the future yet to be initiated category. Now there are some things that could impact the housing that are ongoing, currently happening, and or underway, but when it comes to the zoning and all this is stuff that is yet to happen. But the point is the plan has been approved. So we will see over the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, what happens with this future land use map. What I think is exciting is this opens up almost a whole new kind of possibility when it comes to real estate, when it comes to housing in general, housing availability. We know that Knoxville and Knox County has a housing availability problem. We have continued to build underbuilt compared to anywhere essentially in the state over the past, I think the stat is like 12 years, if not longer. So this is certainly exciting news for what's happening within Knoxville, and it's cool to see how this plan includes things like walkability, bikeability, access to parks. So I think it's exciting for Knoxville, it's exciting for Knox County, and we will see what happens. So in terms of the overall plan, in the future land use map, on page 71, you can go and look at, they've basically got a wheel that shows like where's the action, what's happening annually, what's gonna happen 5 years, 10 years. And so the goal is at 5 years to review the plan for major updates at least once every 5 years or as needed based on annual reports and updates as determined by the Planning Commission. And then in 10 years, again, schedule major update to the comprehensive plan. So basically keep track, start enacting these plans, and in 5 years, so that would be 2029, reassess, see where we're at, and see what's happened. So if you hear updates or news about missing middle housing, it is directly related to this comprehensive land use and transportation plan. It has been approved, and we're going to start to see hopefully some missing middle housing be developed in the form of condos, townhouses, multifamily, and then also more neighborhoods that include walkability, probably smaller yards, but access to parks, etc. So TBD, we will see. I'm excited for how this pans out. And as always, if you would like to discuss this with me personally, you can always give me a call, give me a text. And if you want more information about Knoxville and the East Tennessee area, as always, also text or call or subscribe, because I will keep making these videos for you. I'm Haley Jones. I'll see you next time.